Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound. Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I am Alrik Brissell. I am the founding host of the podcast. I've been crewing up on sets for over 10 years. I've worked on dozens of arts and features, either as a producer or a director, and I'm just finishing up my first feature film as a writer-director called The Alternate.
And you're also wearing your alternate shirt for those watching on YouTube. Haha. I am Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer with 2 features under my belt and a third somewhere out there around the corner. I'm a former film critic and a current distribution consultant who used to manage the creative distribution initiative at Sundance. Cool. Okay, so this week we have editor Myron Kerstein on the show to talk about editing the new musical In the Heights. In the Heights is the film adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway hits that he made before doing Hamilton. It's amazing. The movie's amazing. Everyone go watch it. And this movie was directed by Jon M of Crazy Rich Asians fame. Myron talks to us about how he got into editing, his approach on how he cut such a highly anticipated film as this one. And he also edited Crazy Rich Asians, episodes of Girls and Garden State. Check it out. I thought it was such a lovely time talking to Myron. Anyway, we're going to jump right into the interview first. And then afterwards, we have a Get Shorty from yet another Australian filmmaker. And this one's called I'm Your Fool. And then we read a listener email. So without further words, here's our conversation with Myron.
We're here with Myron Kerstein, the editor on the new film In the Heights, which everyone is either loving or can't wait to see. I'm in the can't wait to see category. Please, Myron, can you give us an elevator pitch for In the Heights?
In the Heights is about the story of this community. It's about Washington Heights, which is on the, I guess, the upper top of the Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, and it's mostly made up of Latinx. People don't like that term, but Latin people of color and Dominicans and people from Puerto Rico, and I love the film. Yeah, I love working on it.
For the record, I'm in the loving the film camp, just so we're aware of our affinities here. How many days did you shoot, or how many days are you where the production committed to shooting this film?
I believe it was 48 days total. I believe it was slated at first for 43 days, and then we shot an additional 5 days later, deep in post.
Do you have any idea what the rough budget is of the film?
50 million. 50 million.
Wow.
How long did you personally spend working on the film, from being brought on and prep and everything to its release right now?
I mean, I've been working on it a solid 2 years. I mean, there was a hiatus there of 6 months during the pandemic where, like everybody, was not working on anything, just staying at home, wishing that this movie would be out in the universe. But we also ended up working on it more with that after that break.
And then our question normally was how big was your crew? But since you probably weren't on set the whole time, how big was your editing team?
I had about a team of 20. I had led by my assistant editor, my first assistant, Andrew Pang, and then the second, Elliot Traeger. And then I had 2 amazing music editors, Jennifer Dunnington and Jim Bruning. And I had an amazing VFX supervisor, Mark Russell. Tim Dunnington was the VFX editor. And anyways, I can go on for a while, but basically, I had a very large crew for 98% of the job. And then it was just me alone in my living room later in the pandemic, and my first assistant in his living room in New York. I was in LA then, and then John Chu in his living room at his house in LA. So, but most of the time it was this big giant machine, all trying to just be at service to Jon and I to cut the film, a big support staff to get us to the finish line.
Compared to all the other projects that you've edited, how difficult was this one?
It was the most difficult for sure. There was so many moving parts, not only the music components, but the different storylines, the different locations. There's a lot of complex VFX in this show, even though you don't, obviously we have big VFX sequences like when the sun goes down and dancing inside of the building, but also things that you wouldn't know there was VFX or basically in almost every scene.
So I want to hear about like what your process was. Like, were you editing the project from like day 2, like right when they're shooting? Like, are you getting dailies in? Are you starting your process right there and like building an assembly for Jon, or like tell us how it all went down?
Yeah, I started basically a week before production started, and Jon showed me rehearsal footage and animatics cut together to just kind of give me an idea of just the vibe of the show. And right away I was filled with tears just seeing rehearsal footage, and he said, remember that feeling? And I took that feeling all the way through dailies. So yeah, basically I was getting a mountain of dailies every day, and I would painstakingly just sift through those, watch the dailies, make selects, cut a little section of a musical performance, cut a little scene if there was a little scene, and I would ship what I could to Jon over the course of the shoot. Occasionally there was problems with a scene. We had to reshoot a couple of scenes here and there because of issues with like makeup or issues, just technical reasons. And, just try to be a support for Jon as he was, immersed in this really, $50 million is actually not a lot of money for this scale, but it almost all your budget goes away when you make anything in New York City, let alone make it with extras and have locations. And so it sounds strange, but we were kind of like a gigantic indie film running around the city trying to make this thing. And so I had to be as much, just up to camera, at least watching the dailies as I could, as possible. And then just cutting and, assembling. And, I think I had the whole film together 2 weeks after they were done with principal. Like I had a pass of it.
Can you extend that discussion of process to that time you said you were in your living room and your first AE was in his living room and Jon's? And so are you cutting virtually, or what is the process of the three of you?
Yeah, so Andy Pang and myself both had basically a mirror copy of like local drives on Avids in our living rooms. But then we were using this program called Evercast and streaming basically to Jon, and he could see basically my Avid streamed into just a Chrome website, and then we could just make tweaks together like on the fly as if we were in the edit room together. It's very internet dependent, the speed at which things can happen, but it seemed to work pretty flawlessly with us.
And then is the communication through Evercast, or do you also have to be on like Zoom as well?
It's usually through Evercast, but we were having a hard time with some of the sync. Sync is so important with a musical. So we opted to basically take out the component of sing our little, basically you see little bubbles like a version of Zoom in the bottom of your sort of screen, and we decided not to use that and just do everything on FaceTime on a different monitor.
Wow. Yeah.
But since then I've actually worked on shows where I was literally looking at the showrunner in their little bubble, or the director in their little bubble and doing it that way. But for this show, and also, by the way, this was brand new. When like Evercast, it was all brand new to us, so we were totally doing everything on the fly. Since we've finished working the film, like almost the entire industry is working on some version of Evercast or some other like streaming platform in which they can work with their co-collaborators. But But we're just like, what is the best sync? Okay, it's this way. Okay, let's not mess with it. Let's move on. And
You said you had this 20-person team that's working with you. Like when you're getting your dailies in, like are they being passed through your assistant editor before they come to you first? Or like what does that process look like?
Yeah, there was so much organization that went into just preparing it for me. Everything from just making sure that all the footage came in, there was transferred correctly, meaning that whatever was shot on set actually got to them in the cutting room. And then there might be 2, 3, 4 cameras are all being shot at the same time. So sometimes they'll literally group them all together. That way I could see multi cameras all going at once. And then there was this component of the music, which was basically in every scene. So they had to make sure that I had all the elements for the music. And oftentimes I wanted all the vocals separated from each other versus so if I had 7 people in a number, I want them all separated from each other. And also I want the chorus separated from them. And then I want the instrumentals separated. So there was a lot of organization just to give me a single take, or a camera angle. And then from there, it was so one assistant was literally prepping. We use this program called Script Sync. So I could click on a vocal line and bring up a take very quickly. So there was basically, 8 hours of processing with the assistants to get me the footage. And, that happened every day.
I was thinking a question really quick.
Oh,
sorry,
shit.
Liz. So was this movie done in the classical musical sense where the whole soundtrack is recorded in the studio beforehand and then everyone's lip syncing on set? Was that the way that you guys approached this one?
Well, actually, it was a hybrid. We did quite a bit of live recording as well. I would say maybe 40% of the film was live recording, numbers like Champagne, which is actually a oneer, meaning one shot scene. It's completely live, done by the actors on the day. Or the beginning of When You're Home, which is Leslie Grace, who plays Nina Rosario. She's completely live, a cappella, starting that number. And then there's things like 96,000, the beginning of that number when the boys are walking down the street, half of them were singing live. The other half had a cold. So it's a bit of a mixture of both. And then, so we had also a lot of pre-records, but also the pre-records were done way before the shooting. So some of the acting didn't always match the pre-records. So then we went back and re-recorded some vocals to match the performance of the day as well. So It was a big hybrid of all the above and trying to mix and match and try to just make it, at the end of the day, what Jon and I wanted more than anything is just to make it feel grounded. We really loved, we love old Hollywood musicals, but we also wanted something that felt very real and grounded into the community. It was about Washington Heights, and we didn't, even though they were singing songs, which in a way is, takes you out of reality. We just wanted that sort of, that grounded nature to it.
By the way, I watched it yesterday, and on my hike, I listened to the soundtrack, and then in the shower, I listened to the Broadway soundtrack. So I am very fresh. I'm thinking about the pandemic and using Evercast, and then the traditional editorial timeline where you lock picture and you've locked picture and you never reopen it, right? There's kind of a crankiness to that whole process, a good crankiness. What I'm trying to get at is you mentioned that there were some additional shoot days that were added, 5 days, I think you said. Can you talk a little bit about, was that as a result of getting more time in the pandemic to think about this process and the delay of the release, or was it something completely different?
Well, the additional shooting actually happened towards the end of the shoot because we didn't have a time to, I'm sorry, not during the shoot, during in the post, actually before our first lock of post. I'll explain that in a second. So basically we had previewed most of the film for literally test audiences or friends and family type screenings with stock footage that represented our community chorus, for example. And also we had stock footage and Google Map images that basically represented aerial footage of Washington Heights. So it was incomplete in some degree, like principal photography wasn't technically really finished. But we had to ask for those resources from the studio. They're just like, well, let's see the film. Let's see what else you need. So those pickup days were actually always intended, but we didn't get them until like 8 months into like the post process. Literally, I think our last friends and family screening was like the last time and the first time that anyone saw like the last footage that we shot. But editorially, we had all this time that we had locked the film, and we had all this time away from it, and we thought we were done. We shut down right as we were starting to mix, and I actually went off to do another job, which also got shut down. And then Jon had called and said, do you want to open up picture again and see about making some trims, trying out a couple of new ideas? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And sure enough, we took out a really big scene, trimmed a bunch of scenes, put back a small little scene, and also I spent a meticulous amount of time with the music department just slipping sync, which is basically just frame nudging to get words more closely into people's mouths.
I didn't know that there was a nice version of the phrase frame nudging.
Can I say what it really?
Yeah, you could say the real one. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, we call it frame fucking.
Yeah,
which is
Right.
I really feel like the film improved quite a bit having that time away from it, because you never feel like you ever finish a film until somebody says pencils down, and it was nice to have a second chance at it.
Going back to open the edit, was that something that like Jon had to get a permission from the studio to do, or was that something that like he was just allowed to do on his own just because he felt that the movie could be better?
No, he had to ask permission because it was going to be a cost, but I think everyone was on the same page. The studio was incredibly supportive of his vision, and of course Lynn's vision. Spend another $50,000 and open up some, studios are not so keen on doing that unless you have real reasons. So we had some ideas that we pitched them, and I was happy they agreed.
I want to know what's on the cutting room floor. What was the scene that you cut? What are we missing?
Well, actually, there's a really beautiful scene between Melissa Berra and Anthony Ramos that takes place at her apartment, where she shows basically her fashion designs and some clothing she made. And it actually used to take place right after the scene post blackout, where Melissa and Anthony are on the steps, and he confesses basically that he's always been obsessed with her. And so basically he used to go directly from that scene to upstairs her apartment, and she showed him basically, her inspirations. And we felt like, and during the blackout itself, she used to discover during the blackout, like this amazing design. And instead we decided to construct it as a moment of frustration that she still couldn't get there yet. And the reason why we did it is we just wanted someplace to go with that character. We felt like giving her too many wins too soon was another way of not having an engine, just making something too satisfying too soon. And, the film doesn't have a lot of plot, and it doesn't have a lot of engines. It's very vignette-y and a slice of life, and anything we could just give it a little bit of a motor, I wish she, she just seems so frustrated. We just wanted to do everything we could to try to keep the audience engaged.
So I want to take it away from In the Heights for just a second to talk about your collaboration with Jon Chu, because you guys did Crazy Rich Asians together before this. And I'm just curious, how did that start? Like, how did you guys meet? How did you end up on that project? And, how did it end up continuing onto this next one?
Well, I got the name. It was just a name. I heard about Crazy Rich Asians through my agent, and my agencies will give you like lists of like films that might end up being shot and over the course of the next year, and it's everything from like the next Avengers film, which I'll never have a chance to cut, to like a tiny little indie, which sounds amazing, but you're like, okay, am I going to work on a $500,000 film? Like so there's a big range, and in the middle somewhere in there was Crazy Rich Asians. But right away I was like, I don't know if this sounds maybe racist, or like, are they making fun of Asians? Like, I didn't know from the surface like what the hell this was. I had no idea. I was kind of scared, but John's name was attached to it, so I was like, okay, this is interesting, but I'm not sure. But then my buddy Brad Simpson, who was a post supervisor on this film that I was an assistant on 20 years ago, this film Velvet Goldmine, which Todd Haynes directed. So he was the post supervisor. I was the assistant editor. And, fast forward 20 years later, he's a big time producer, and he works with Nina Jacobson at Color Force. And they are producing this movie. And I was like, wait a minute, Brad is producing this movie? Like, there's something got to be great about this movie. And so I said to Brad, would you send me the script? And B, can you put in a good word to John Chu, because I'd like to see if I can get a meeting. And it was like, absolutely, I think you'd be perfect for it. Will you read the script? Of course, I read the script. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I have to be part of this movie. And I initially just met John through a Skype, and he was already prepping the film in Malaysia. And I just had to give my hardest sell of a lifetime to him, like I'm doing with you right now, to convince him to hire me, knowing that, he had worked with some incredibly talented editors who were very big time. And I just had to convince him that I had to be the person working with him. And then thank God, we ended up hitting it off and really seeing eye to eye creatively on Crazy Rich Asians. Of course, it helps that it did okay in the box office and did well, making an impact for a lot of people. And from there, he was like, do you want to keep doing some stuff? I'm like, absolutely. let's go. And so then I cut a couple pilots with him, one for Freeform called Good Trouble, which was a very cool experience. And then another show, which is dear to my heart, the show Home Before Dark on Apple TV Plus, which the second season literally premiered last week as well. And he shot the pilot in the second episode, and then he went to go prep in the Heights. He asked me, would I be interested in working in that? I said, duh, here we go. Of course, a dream come true. And soon enough, I got the call to come to New York and join him. So that's it in a nutshell.
Amazing.
Alrik, should we move to Final Five with our?
Let's do it. I mean, we could literally talk to you for hours. This has been fantastic. But
hey, anytime you want to do a follow up, you let me know. Like you want.
Oh well, we'll be taking you up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We wouldn't offer that because we will.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down.
So, what's the first? We ask this, but you can evolve it to however you want to respond. So, the question we have is, what's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now? You could say first film you ever cut, but I know you've also written and directed some things of your own. So you could talk about the films that you've made and how do you feel about them?
Well, one of the first films I ever made, it's not the first film, but one of the early films I made was this film called Raising Victor Vargas, which is this beautiful indie film about Puerto Rican kids in the Lower East Side. And to some degree, that film was basically what made my entire career. And working on that film, not just because people liked it and noticed it, but it gave me a sense of what was important to me as an editor, telling truthful stories, making something that had universal themes to it, and directed by this amazing director, Peter Solet. And it obviously has those same things connect to a film like In the Heights. So it did help me get to work with Zach Braff saw that movie and hired me to make Garden State, and Paul White saw Raising Victor Vargas and hired me to do In Good Trouble. In Good Trouble, I'm very thankful I had that experience so early in my career.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
It's all about process. You can't be afraid of the process. Don't get overwhelmed by the bigness of it. Break it down into smaller pieces. It's breathe, look in the mirror, you've got this. Don't be overwhelmed, because it is everyone gets overwhelmed by the scope of things, but the process is what makes, it's just about the work, doing the work. And it takes time to make something really good, and sometimes you spend a lot of time and it's not any good, but that's okay too. That's what we do as artists. It's about the work, it's about it's corny, but it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. It's the same thing it's about the process, enjoy the process, enjoy what you're doing. I'm really falling in love with editing all over again. The last couple of years, I've just, it helps to work on really great things, but I love what I do. I love finding things, little kernels, gems, and that's all about process.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
I just want to inspire future filmmakers and hopefully inspire them enough that they want to tell their stories. I want to inspire, the next generation to just make great art, and hopefully that'll change the world, because I think despite, regardless of how well In the Heights does or any of the things I ever make, I do think that films like Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights will be part of change. And if I can inspire people to believe in art can do that thing, then that's it right there. That's all I've ever wanted in my entire career.
If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, just be patient. There's a saying in the film, Paciencia Fe, which means patience and faith. And Jesus Christ, if I could just tell my younger self that, I'm emotional just thinking about it. And having patience and faith through this fucking pandemic, especially, is it's been it's been challenged for the entire world. And but it is a metaphor to my own experience. For me, I wish I knew that I could be here today. If I knew that 20 years ago, because it's hard. I literally started my career as a PA sleeping on somebody's floor because I couldn't afford an apartment in New York City. And, but I was chasing a dream of just making art, somehow. And I wanted to be a part of this crazy business. But there was definitely moments where I was just like, this is a horrible mistake. Am I going to ever get here? Dad was right. I should have been, my dad was a plumber, I was just like, I should have taken a trade or, but yeah, that's what I would tell myself. Paciencia Fe, patience and faith.
All right. Is making movies hard?
Yes, they're incredibly hard. It's so hard that it's amazing that anything can ever get made at all, let alone be something that somebody actually wants to see or moves them into tears, or is something you want to watch again, that you want to do, that is incredibly difficult. It's literally like trench warfare on steroids. You never think that if you walk on a set that anything will resemble something that you want to digest and pay other people for. It's incredibly difficult, but it's also, it's all worth it. Every single minute of it, it's worth it.
Oh, well, where should people go to watch In the Heights and find out more about you? Do you have a website or anything, or?
Just IMDb, probably. That's probably the easiest. But I don't. I'm so bad.
Yeah, you seem to be doing all right.
Yeah, exactly.
But could I be doing better? I have no idea. No, I'm mostly just trying to, people say, do you have a reel? And it's like, oh, it's kind of my movies. Like, it's kind of, Yeah.
Watch Crazy Rich Asians. That's all you need to see.
Yeah,
You've probably already seen it. So
yeah, you probably seen it. You just didn't know it. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Alrik, what do you remember from our conversation with Myron?
I remember that Myron was living the dream in all the ways that you could imagine it. It's like if you're like a young person as a production assistant or listening to this show and you could imagine like the ultimate outcome in whatever department you decide to go to, it's like Myron is at the top of whatever that department is, basically. I mean, he talks down like, oh, I will never edit an Avengers movie or whatever. Right. But it's like, dude, you edited Crazy Rich Asians, fool. You edited In the Heights. It's like as far as like movies that have buzz around them, like you can't really get much higher than either of those, I mean, unless you are literally talking about the next Avengers movie, which I guess is like when you're at that high level, you compare yourself to that, right?
But why would you compare yourself to, I mean, it's not like Marvel movies are like, oh, that editing in that Marvel movie was just spectacular. Like they talk about other things when they talk about Marvel movies. So I don't know why that's the point of comparison for him.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just money. Like he wants to make more money, probably.
Yeah,
which we all do.
I guess it's just like when you're at that high level, it's like, what else can you compare yourself to except the biggest budgeted movies in the world, when you're working on things that are equally as famous as, the Avengers, right? I mean, Crazy Rich Asians, like I don't think you can argue that it's not as famous because it was such a big deal when it came out, and it still is now. But anyways, I mean, I just, it was just like, wow, how do you get to be that guy? Basically, like, how do I get to be the directing equivalent of Myron? It's like, I don't know. A lot of luck, I guess.
I mean, for someone at the top of his game, he was so sweet. Like I said to you earlier, like he really, I don't know if he gets a ton of attention for his work. He probably gets a lot of jobs and a lot of job offers and like he's doing well, but I don't know if people are like, Myron, please be on Entertainment Tonight, and Myron, please, like we want to focus on you on Variety. And so I felt like it was really nice. It seemed like he enjoyed talking about process with us. Maybe that's me projecting because I was having a good time too.
No, I think he did enjoy the conversation, and like the way that he is and he interacted with us is the way I would hope that someone at that level would be, right? Like that wonderful, that humble, that excited to talk about the craft, that interested in the conversation. It's like those sort of things. It was just wonderful. So yeah, I hope everyone else felt the same way that we did about this conversation, because it was heartwarming, and I wish I could talk to him for another hour. Yeah, there was so many nuggets. I probably will have him back on the show, one day to talk about some of this stuff more in depth, because I mean, there's a lot to dig into, with that guy. But Liz, Get Shorty.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
This week on Get Shorty, we have yet another Australian filmmaker, Alicia Horsfield, with a film called I'm Your Fool. Here's Alicia to talk about her film.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Horsfield and I'm the writer and director of short film I'm Your Fool. So the first question is, why did I choose to make a short versus any other medium? So basically, I made this film in the first year of my film degree. With the assignment, we were told that we had to make a short film under 10 minutes. And if you've seen it, I think it's 15 minutes almost. So I made it a short because we kind of had to. And because of that film, it's challenged me to try and keep pushing to keep short films short, under that 10-minute mark, not pushing past the 15. Other half of the question was, why this story? So I wrote the story in, like I said, the first year of my uni degree in 2019. I had just freshly turned 18. I'd moved out, I felt like an adult. I was in university. I felt like the world was in my hand. I was living in the Brisbane city and I was seeing someone in my university class, and obviously if you've seen I'm Your Fool, it did not end well at all. And that was the first time my heart had ever been broken. And I guess I just really wanted to tell my story because I thought this is how other people have felt for sure, feeling betrayed you know, liking someone and then being like, no, I'm not ready for a relationship, and then getting into a relationship a second later. I just really wanted to get my feelings out. I wanted people to feel like, yeah, I felt this too before. How much does that suck? And then I made him be on the crew of the film, so I thought it was funny. You know, I thought it was just really important to tell the story. Also, I wanted to keep it for memory for me. You know, years later, it's like a little time capsule. That's what I was feeling at the moment, and I thought I would never ever feel happiness again. It's like, honey, this is only the start. You thought that was sad? The second question is, how did my crew raise funds? So we used Indiegogo. I didn't want to put incentives because I feel like with a lot of short films, they have incentives like for $25 you get a poster, for $50 you get a shirt and merch from the film. And I feel like, I think it's a cute idea if you already have a fan base following or a pre-established audience. And because this is my debut short film, no one knew who I was. I just had people from, you know, high school and my family and scouts, you know, people who knew me. So I really felt like, does someone really want an I'm Your Fool shirt or an I'm Your Fool poster? So I guess we just relied on word of mouth and people just being really lovely and just supporting, you know, my dream, you know, just helping me out. And yeah, we just kept posting online. We had a Facebook. All right, the third question. So what did I think would happen before making the film and what happened afterwards? So I loved the film more than I thought I would. I'd have to say, especially because of the cinematography. Shout out to Jacob Shrimpton, he did amazing. And I thought I would continue to direct and write and just keep doing that. But actually I went kind of a different direction. That film inspired me to keep writing, but I think I prefer writing than directing. So I wrote and directed my second short film, Lola Cooper Needs a Boyfriend. So it inspired me to make a more fun film instead of a really personal film. It also led me into first ADing, so first assistant directing. I've been a first AD on, I think, 18 shorts now. So definitely not what I thought I'd be end up doing, but it was still, you know, really fun to keep writing and directing. And actually, middle of next year, I will be directing, and I've also written my third and I think final short, because I feel like I want to really move into long form, is God Hates Samantha. So it's led me on a path. It's really inspired me to keep writing and telling different stories, especially queer stories and women in film. That's what keeps inspiring me. All right, fourth question. Now that I'm Your Fool is out in the world, what purpose does it serve? I think that it serves a purpose for, you know, people who are just freshly out of high school about to enter uni, is that it's okay to feel completely vulnerable and stupid in relationships, friendships, that you're gonna do stupid things and you're gonna regret it and you're gonna feel gross and annoyed at yourself, but that is part of growing up, you know. I don't mean to be preachy, I'm only 20 now, but you're gonna do stupid things and you're gonna make yourself look stupid and you're gonna do things for people you wish you hadn't done it for and gone to the effort for, but it's making memories and you can make a film out of it. So I think it just serves a purpose that people can relate to. Oh, that's so embarrassing. I wish that didn't happen to me. So I think it's just there to be comforting, that I'm glad that someone else has felt like this. All right, question 5, last question. Now that I'm Your Fool is out, what have I done differently? I definitely would have given Kay a monologue at the end, because at the end of the film, it's just like a 2-minute Amelia monologue. And I really like that in the way that it seems a bit boring and unnecessary for a short film for someone to have a 2-minute monologue. But I kind of like that because I was like, hell yeah, Amelia, speak for 2 minutes while Kay just sits there going, just doing nothing, absolutely bored. So I would have loved to give him a monologue. I like the way that he didn't get a chance to reply, because I didn't want him to have a chance to explain himself. But now watching the final product, I feel like that's what the audience was like, I want to hear what he has to say back. And it wasn't a cliffhanger that was a satisfying one. It was just an annoying one that makes you go, well, what happened? And also, I would have made it more clear that in the end of the movie, Kay has keys in his pockets and he's putting it in the back pocket. But on the day, we actually didn't get a clear enough shot. So and we couldn't get a reshoot of it. So I would have made that more clear that he actually wanted to stay there with Amelia and he didn't want them both to leave. But that is all the questions. So thank you so much for letting me talk about my film on here, and bye.
So Liz, what did you think of this one?
I wrote a lot of notes on this one, but can I give a caveat, because we talk about it this later in the show. I really don't want to hurt anyone's feelings when we talk about negative thoughts, when we have constructive criticism on a short. So I'm gonna couch a lot of what I say to be as kind as possible, because I really want to make sure we're not being too negative.
Sure.
I really like the concept of these two characters having meaningful conversations in these costumes. It feels like a very, very personal short, but I'm constantly questioning the logic of the characters and the world. And it almost feels like, and I only say this because this is what I do in my own work, it feels like the writer was trying to get something out. Like the writer had a really shitty relationship with someone who kind of played with their emotions, and they wrote it into the short, and then they produced it to make themselves kind of see the problem at a distance.
Mhm.
Like it felt so personal that I had trouble believing the world and the logic. I don't know. Like I hope I'm making myself clear. It didn't feel like it had a life to itself. It felt like it was an exercise in someone's for therapy for me.
Right.
Which I'm for. I'm supportive of film therapy. It just but
Right.
I please go on, and I can add more later. What were you about to say?
No, I mean, I get that. I guess at first I was trying to understand if they were high schoolers or college students working at a high school, but I think in the end I just realized they're high schoolers, probably.
Oh,
right?
I didn't know that. You're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, that makes sense. But they seemed older. They seemed much older.
Well, they seemed older, and then there was that line in the beginning where he like looks at a girl's butt, and then she's like, "Oh, that's illegal." Like,
Right.
"Oh, you're,"
That's why I thought they were
So I was
older.
like, "Wait, so maybe they're older," but then they are talking about like graduating, so then I guess they could be college students, So that must be what it was. That it was college students, like you trying to graduate. They need this community service. They're going to go do it at the high school, or I don't know. Do high schools make you do community service? I don't really know. I guess that's all not really important. But what the thing that struck me about this was at first I was like, what is this movie? What's going on here? Why do I care about any of this? They're in costumes. Okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
But then, unlike you, when they got to the emotional part, I was like, oh, this is about a relationship, but this is about like, being used by somebody who's basically taking advantage of the fact that they know that you are crazy about them. And then this person is using that crazy to do things that they want to do, but they don't actually care. Right. Which I think is really interesting, because I mean, I think that's very universal. Like we've all been through that. Like I definitely went through that in high school. I think I was probably on both ends of that at one point, either the person who was obsessed and, mistreating somebody because not really intentionally, but like when someone's crazy about you and you're not really crazy about them, it's like hard, like you don't want to shut them down. So you like, invite it, but then like you're leading them on by like being positive, and then suddenly, then it's suddenly this bad, terrible thing. So I've definitely been in the guy's position in this before, although I didn't sleep with them. And then in the other, I've also been on the other camp where I've been completely crazy about somebody and then just not at all seeing it, and then just sort of completely getting led on, also not sleeping with them. I don't have sex in any of these versions, but basically, yeah. So I really appreciated it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because I felt the authenticity of the character, especially the lead character. Like that felt like emotions that I've either felt or have been expressed to me by somebody else, which I think is good. But I think that there's a lot of the movie, like it doesn't need to be 14 minutes long. Like it definitely could have been shorter. And there are some things in it that, I don't know. There's like a little montage of them, like whatever, like going out by the river and stuff. And he's just get to the core, like we don't need like this musical interchange montage, but Oh no, that's just me. I'm not a big montage fan.
No, but I agree. It doesn't need to be 14 minutes. But I think I was following along in the story and it felt like very convenient for her to be so eloquent about exactly what the situation was. And it felt very convenient for the story that he didn't really have an unheard perspective that the audience could benefit from. Like, that's why I'm saying it felt like therapy. It felt like very one-sided, that someone is confessing, you manipulated me and I like you and all these things that I agree are really, really human, interesting concepts.
Right.
But to watch just that dialogue scene, I want to be pulled into the drama, and the drama just felt like someone saying to an ex-lover exactly what they wanted to say when they didn't get to say it before. Like,
yeah. And the truth is that in these type of bad relationships, there is no convenient way to say the things you're actually feeling usually, because like when you start to say those things, that person will either turn on you in a very worse way to basically stop you from saying these truths or whatever you're feeling, or they'll leave and, like abandon the conversation so you don't get a chance to finish. So I agree that it didn't feel realistic in that way. It's like, it was very much like he just took it like a champ and didn't really like fight back or like, and it was almost like he gave the response that you wish the person would give in this kind of situation where, but then like, then she gets to reject him by taking her hand away.
That's why
or
it
whatever.
felt like rewriting history. It felt like someone rewriting their own personal history.
But is that so wrong? Like, that's what
it's great.
a lot of movies are.
Artist
like,
therapy. It's great.
Yeah.
But give me a close-up then. Give me a moving camera. Give me something visual to look at. Give me slightly better sound. Give me
moving camera.
Give me something
You want that
more.
moving camera.
I do.
I don't think this movie needed a dolly shot. That's not what this movie's missing, in my opinion.
But I needed some sort of craft to go with the personal. That's all.
Well, I like the use of wides, especially when they're at the car. They were like in tighter, and then like they go out wide when he's like trying to take the suit off and stuff, and like losing the car keys or whatever. I also like the little touch where like he won't admit that he lost the car key, but he just did, and like that's just like this guy to a T. Like that interaction like really sums up the character perfectly. I do wish, after seeing like movies like Moonlight and other movies that deal with like human relationship drama in a very realistic, authentic feeling way, that's kind of what I want from every drama, is it to feel super authentic and realistic. But it's just hard to do that. It's so hard to do a movie as well as Barry Jenkins did Moonlight, or other filmmakers have done other movies similarly. It's just very difficult. And monologues are not the answer. And this movie basically has like a lot of monologues.
Yes, actually, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that the monologuing is the core of what my comment is. But just to take it back circular, the heart's in the right place. It's trying to be a very authentic interpersonal drama. And it's a really goofy, fun concept that they're in these ridiculous costumes while it's happening. So good effort. Good effort.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that like, it kind of like, I was disinterested in the beginning, but then as the actual like point of the story unfolded, I became more engaged, but it was probably like 5 minutes, 6 minutes in when I actually get to like her talking about what's actually on her mind. And then that's when the movie kind of gets interesting. And so I don't know, I just wish it was shorter. But I think I wish most things were shorter, in general, including my own work, to be honest. Just wish things were shorter. I always realize later that it's like I thought I had minimized the amount of words I needed in this movie to the absolute bare minimum, and then when I go into editorial, I realize that I have like 50% more words than I need still. Like I could have cut another half of the script down, it would have been better, And that's basically what I do in the editing process, is cut the other 50% out. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot to like about it. I think the production value was really good. Like I thought it was one of the better looking of these indie shorts. Like a really crisp, clean look to it all around. And I liked the makeup. I liked how the makeup got more and more smeared throughout the day. I thought that was a nice touch. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of good in here. But I'm also, this isn't not my kind of movie generally. Which is another reason why I think it did a pretty good job to keep me so engaged throughout, because usually like this kind of stuff where people are just talking about feelings the whole time, I'm like, it's hard to make that good, I think. So Alicia, great job. If we crushed your dreams,
let us know.
Tell us why we're wrong about everything. Although this out of all the shorts we've had recently, this has like almost 1,000 views. Like this is way more popular. Most of our shorts only have like 50, 100, 200. So I don't know. Alicia must be doing something right. Anyways, time for You Got Mail.
My breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You got mail.
All right, so this week we have another listener email to read. This is from Jason and Matt, and they write, "Hey there, just wanted to drop you a line to let you know how much the podcast has kept us going this past year and continues to be an inspiration. I think that the biggest challenge has been trying to maintain a collaborative process with the cast and crew throughout all this, and the podcast, I'm confused. Can you read this? And the podcast, my listening.
I think there's a little bit of a typo here, but I think he means like in the podcast, my listening into the podcast, and then on those great conversations about filmmaking when there are few and far between these days. Something like that.
Okay. Yeah, it was a nice thing. Thank you." And they continue to say, "My friend and I are shooting our second micro budget feature at the moment, 30K in upstate New York. And I just finished listening to episode 313. We had our first feature, Walk Away, make it on Amazon Prime during the pandemic, where hopefully it will have reached the obsessive horror / thriller nerds who mine those algorithms. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work, Jason and Matt." First of all, we want to shout out that Walk Away is free on Amazon Prime, free to Prime users. And we want to support Jason and Matt on making that first feature. And but also, that's so nice. Thanks for listening. Which one was 313? Maybe I should go look that up right now.
I thought it was Anna Elizabeth James at first, but I think it wasn't. I think it was the one after Anna Elizabeth James.
Is it Michelle?
No, it's Jordan and Hudson.
Oh, Jordan and Hudson. Yeah, that's
Which
right.
makes sense because these guys are like, in the same kind of groove of like just doing it, like low budget feature, So I think hearing from like-minded low budget feature folks is probably nice for people. Yeah. I don't know, this is like sort of off topic, but I've been thinking like lately, we've been having like a nice mix of guests. Like we have people like, Myron, who's like working on one of the biggest movies out there. And then we have people like, Jordan and Hudson, or even Michelle Boyner, like working on these small little movies. And it was going to kind of ask you off air, but I'll just ask you on air. Like, do you want to keep on having like the smaller filmmaker guests, or is it really like exciting to talk to the Myrons of the world to you?
Well, I think talking to the Myrons who are not the directors and the producers, but are like the cinematographers, the editors, because I think there's something about the way this industry exalts quote unquote above the line players that I don't like. And I like the idea that we're creating a little bit more of a conversation with people throughout the crew. And I think there's still a lot to learn. I mean, what I got out of Myron was like, oh, you organized your editorial schedule not unlike an indie feature 1/10 your budget, like that kind of data is important. And his perspective was amazing. So I don't need to go after the the whatever I'm trying to think of famous filmmakers, and for some reason
Zack
the Zack Snyders of the world. I would be fine doing high level key crew people and then our compatriots in the indie film world in a mix of that. Do you feel like we're missing out?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't want to have John Chu on the show to talk about directing in the Heights, I think that would be an awesome conversation. But I don't think it's like, I don't want to miss out on the small little filmmakers like, the one I'm editing right now, which Kate Forsat, who made this little small movie called Threebound in New York, like on a tiny little shoestring budget, shot, in 11 days or whatever. And is like, now in the streaming ether of what is like in the world of where indie films go. And it's like, I don't know, those conversations are interesting to me, even though like, no one knows who Kate is and, like yet potentially. Right. Or I don't know, like that, not that many people are going to see the movie versus In the Heights. Like everyone's going to see this movie, or has already seen this movie. right? I don't know. Like, I think there's value to both. And I think it's really interesting to talk to both of the types of people. But I would like to talk to bigger name directors and writers equally alongside the crew people. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right though. Like, no one really, like, how many times have you heard an editor of a hot new movie come on a podcast? Like, maybe only on our podcast. Not too many times. So I'm happy that we get to do that too.
I never want to, I mean, for me, it's data gathering. So I am personally invested in the answers of people who I think are at our level, because I want to know, how did you do it? And what can I do? What can I take from them? What can I apply to my own career? And when I'm talking to someone who's producing a film that has the budget of like 10 times the value of my life, or more, 100 times the value of my life on the black market, then I don't really get a lot of intel from them, because it's just so out of my league. So I'm not as interested in those conversations, but I certainly think they would help us gain more viewership and more listeners. I'm not against it.
There's like this sweet spot that I really enjoy, which is like where the Nelms brothers and the guy Kevin who directed the Nicolas Cage movie, these people who are like ultra successful, right? Like, they have cracked it in a way that 90% of the filmmakers on our show haven't necessarily, because they've made their first or second features, but they haven't really gotten up to the level where they're getting multi-million-dollar budgets for their projects, or getting that chance to make a movie for more than 1 or 2 million or even 500,000. And these guys have, the
Amber Seelys, right? I mean,
the Amber Seelys, absolutely. Jennifer Gardner's, like these people who have like kind of, they've had success with their first or second feature or even third feature, and then they've gotten to like this other echelon level where they're making movies with real budgets.
Thinking Jennifer Reeder. Are you thinking when you said Jennifer
Gardner? Reeder? Yes.
I was like,
Jennifer Reeder. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
That South Park joke about comparing Jennifer Lopez and Jennifer Garner. Anyway, Sean.
Sorry, Jennifer Reeder. Knives and Skin. I was just looking at a film festival that had screened that movie. It was on their website, and I was like, oh, they screened Jennifer Reeder's film. Like, I want to go to that film festival. So cool. Submit, anyways. Yeah. It's just like, I love that guest. That's like the perfect guest. Amber Seeley should be like the little, whatever roadmap for like the guests that we want, it's like that person, because it's like really helpful for us. And it's also like really exciting to see like where they go next, like what is Amber's next movie going to be? It's like, could be anything. Who knows?
It could be anything. Yeah.
Anyways, do you want to talk, some YouTube comments? Should I read some of the stuff from our good old pal G-Ken?
Gary Kennedy, for those who don't know.
Aren't in the know. This is also on the same episode that Matt and Jason were referencing, 313. G Ken writes, I really like that you two bring up money in the conversations, and not just the film budget, but what the filmmakers do to support themselves. The goal is to make a living making films, but hearing the reality is super helpful, and also is more motivational in a way, because it shows the filmmakers simply as a person chasing their dreams, which is pretty much true for most people. Thanks, Gary. I like that insight, and thanks for not like really throwing us under the bus for not asking that question of Jordan and Hudson on that episode, which we I think we referenced, in the thing that we should have asked that, but we didn't. We asked it on the next one, which is great. On episode 314, GK writes, Alrik, good luck on your trailer edit. Thanks. And you two need to be some fucking adulting adults and waste your time on Reddit. I was curious, does he mean that we shouldn't spend time on Reddit, or that we should spend time on Reddit? I'm not sure. What
you always think the worst of Gary Kennedy. It is so funny to me. Every time he has a comment, you're like, is he being mean or is he being nice? No, he's joking. He's saying we should go on Reddit, but he's making fun of the fact that Reddit is a waste of time. He's joking, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. And then lastly, since we mentioned episode 314, we can't leave out Charm Star Anderson, who writes on the episode 314, which has Banana Peel Man in it. Okay, I didn't want to weigh in on Banana Peel Man because it's 100% Ambrose's film, but I'm really glad Liz got the afternoon special feel from it. I was worried that it would be too niche, which is why I also threw in 60s Batman style music and graphics. but I was mainly going for straight to VHS, cheap, don't do drugs because I'm a superhero style that was big in the 80s and 90s. The poster was almost too obviously inspired by creating Rem Laser, which I do not know what that is.
Rem
So it
Lazar,
looks like
I think. Rem
Rem Lazar, probably. I don't know what it is, so how would I know how to say it? But yeah, it looks like you got the reference 1000% correct, which is awesome. And like, I don't know if he just said that in there to make me feel better about myself, but I guess I kind of got it too, at least to a degree, but not to as strong a degree as you did. But yeah, that's fun. I really like Banana Peel Man. That's a charming ass film. It's really
fun.
cool.
It was sweet.
One other thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I just want to say all kinds of things today.
Yeah.
We got an email that we're not necessarily going to talk.
Well, I thought we were going to say that.
Yet.
We should say it for Get Shorty. Let's save it for Get Shorty.
Okay.
Because I was going to talk. I know you're going to.
I don't even know if we should because she hasn't really responded to us about whether she's comfortable with it or not.
Well, okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to curb. Go ahead, and then
that's okay. But I mean, I was wondering if it's time for one of us to, to put ourselves in the hot seat for Get Shorty next time, and watch one of our movies, and give ourselves a treatment. I just watched one of my older movies that I made in college that was a really hard experience for me, but I watched it now and I'm like, man, I like this movie. This movie's fun.
You're like, I still like it.
But I mean, I wonder what you would
supportive.
think. You might really hate it. I mean, so
I think this begats a larger conversation. It doesn't have to be time consuming, but just the concept of, well, first of all, let's say it out loud. So we broke down a film and Get Shorty a few weeks ago and hurt someone's feelings, essentially. And we don't have to go into the details. Like, I know you alluded to that too. We don't have to talk about it. But ultimately, I think it felt shitty.
Yes.
To like that this person didn't know that Get Shorty was supposed to be constructive criticism. It felt shitty that we hurt their feelings. It felt shitty that they were deterred from filmmaking because of things that we said. And so yeah, I was thinking, I was like getting ready for the day earlier today, and I was just like shitting on my own work. I was like, oh, I could talk about that. I should have used moving camera on this short, and I should have had a much better coverage plan. Like, I'm on board. I'm bored. Let's put ourselves in the hot seat and dole it out and take it, because the whole point is not to make other filmmakers feel bad and put them down. It's just to be honest and constructive about how to make work better.
And we're all learning every time we make a movie. And I mean, there's so many things that I see in all my work that I wish I could change and that I wish didn't happen the way they did, including the feature I'm finishing now. It's like, oh, why didn't I do this? Why did I do that? And it's like, it's just too late to change. It's like, I made this decision. This is what I decided to do, and I got to stick with it. And, lesson learned for the next one, hopefully that I get a chance to make a next one. And, by God, I think I will. I just need to really make it happen. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wanted to somehow, not make it just feel like we're Siskel and Ebert, or like a couple of jerks, throwing down decrees on films. Like, it's just our opinion. We're probably wrong most of the time, it's just how we feel. I talked to a friend the other day about Army of the Dead, which, I mean, my God, I was not a fan of this movie. I'm sorry, Zack Snyder. I'm usually a big fan of his work, but this one, holy crud. Oh God. It was painful. Anyways, so I was talking to him about this movie and he loved it. He thought it was great. He enjoyed every minute of it. He was on board from the beginning. He really liked it. And we had a similar conversation about Nomadland, which I also can't stand.
Oh, I like Nomadland a lot.
Really. I mean, you and everybody else in the world does.
Yeah,
but I mean, and he was just like, Alrik, this movie wasn't made for you. Like, this is not your movie. There's a lot of people who enjoy it. Like, it's okay that you don't like it and someone else does. Like, that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with the world. That doesn't mean people are idiots. It's just like some people like it, some people don't. And that's sort of his philosophy on everything. Is the same person. He's like, oh yeah, like, you can love Army of the Dead and then you can also think it's terrible, but it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means you didn't react to it like someone else did. And it's like, you take that sort of philosophy to every movie. And it's like, there are no bad movies in that version of the world, which I don't know. It's kind of beautiful, kind of stupid at the same time. It's like both to me.
No, I like what you're saying though. It's like we're just two people giving their opinions. But
Yeah.
I don't like to think of it as an objective evaluation. It's just how we reacted to it. And we
Right.
found in our community other people are not being candid with us about our work. And so we're trying to
It's true.
put forth that service. But there's a lot of awkwardness that comes out of the Get Shorty segment, I find.
Or that can,
Yeah.
And I think honest, constructive criticism where it's coming from love is like the most important thing. And I think that maybe this person who we can't consent to talking about on the show yet didn't feel the love. And if she's listening, which I don't know if she is, but just I hope that she knows that it came from a place of respect because we liked the movie enough to talk about it and we wanted to bring it on the show. And we felt there was so much value in what she had made and entertainment, to be honest as well. And, that's why we felt comfortable talking about it the way that we did. And I don't think she felt any of that, and we tried to communicate that to this person, but, hopefully they decide to come on and discuss it with us. Cause I really would love to have an open discussion with this person about this film, the Get Shorty segment, the podcast, us. And, if we had a movie that we put out there for, you or I to talk about, constructively, I think maybe that would help that person.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I would like to invite her to just shit on my movie. Like I would be happy.
Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, totally.
Offer out there.
It's enough of the emotional therapy session. But yeah.
Yeah. If you want to be like all the people who interact with us, who email us, who comment, whatever it is, we love that. That is like part of the show that I think Alrik and I enjoy the most. Please send us questions, comments, suggestions to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. If you like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. You could support the show on Patreon, www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. Give whatever you can. Thank you in advance. It genuinely goes to the making of the show. And finally, check us out, follow us, like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast.
And then thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks to Myron Kerstein for coming on the show, and to Donna Reed and Marilyn Lintel from Storyline Public Relations for setting this up. They're fantastic. Check out our website at makingmoviesishard.com where you can find links to the things we talked about in this episode. And thanks to editor, I don't know, me or Cameron, whoever ends up doing it, for doing the editing. And thanks everyone again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Episode 314, JK writes.
GK.
GK. Why did I say JK? God.